Hello, and welcome to Crafting with Marilyn, and welcome back to November Paper Pumpkin Alternatives. This is part 2. Today I'll be making this card. I realize that it is past Christmas, but I suppose it also could be used for a Happy New Year card. But my main reason for continuing on with this series, even though Christmas has passed, is because I will be using several items that are still found in the recent mini catalog. That would be the August to January mini catalog. Now you still have until January 4th to buy some of these items before they are retired permanently. Some items will be back, but most of the items I'll be showing you today are also on sale. I will provide a link at the end of this video for many of the things that are on sale that I'll be using. Again, the sale runs through January 4th, and there will be links in the description below to be able to view what's on sale and the items that I'm using today. So let's get started. First, we're going to start with a piece of cardstock cut 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4 1/4. Now you'll notice that we're also going to then cut off 1/4 of an inch over here on the side. I preferred to do my embossing first and then cut that piece off because then it gave a more pleasing appearance. This was just my personal opinion. You could also cut this so that it was, let me measure this out for you, so that it's 8 by 5.5 and then run it through the embossing machine. Either way works fine. In order to achieve the embossed look on this card, I use the Evergreen Forest 3D embossing folder. In order to get the sky to appear at the top, you have to actually put this in upside down. So you're going to put it in this way, close the folder, and run it through. Now what this is going to do is, and I usually leave it open when I run it through. But now what this is going to do is it's actually going to give you more of a debossed look. But then when you open the card, you have the embossed look, which is a nice look for when somebody opens the card and sees that the design carries through. For the moment, you can set this part of the card aside. Now we're going to take the gingerbread house from the paper pumpkin kit, and we're going to first of all cut right along this line here as we don't need it. You want to line the score line up right with this channel and then come down with your cutting blade and do that. So we're going to fold it on the score line, and then we're going to take our bone folder and make a nice crease on that. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to open it back up again, and then we're going to take the stamp cut and emboss folder, the Greenery embossing folders, and this is from the, this is from the annual catalog, and we're going to use this in order to emboss the front of the gingerbread house. I should say not this front of the gingerbread house, though you certainly could do it that way, but I meant to say the white piece that was included. You've noticed I've punched out the star. We're going to save that star and put it aside, and then I ran this through the embossing folder like this. I thought it really added a great texture and really made it look more like a gingerbread house. Next, you're going to affix this to the front of the smaller card. Because of the embossing, and also because you want to make sure that you center it well over the door, or around the door, I should say, I prefer to use liquid glue. Always, whenever you're crafting, you should use what you're the most comfortable with and what works for you. And sometimes I find that I pick up my glue a little bit more than I pick up my tape. But then again, it really just does depend on the project. So I'm going to put this on. And I'm going to make sure that it looks centered from these lines right here, but also in the door, so that the door is pretty well centered in the frame. Just press that on. Now we're going to flip it over, and we're going to stamp on the inside while we've got it this way and not attached to the card. If we try to do it after we attach to the card, we may not get a clean stamping because of the bumps and ridges of the embossing. So on the original card, I believe I used soft suede to stamp this. However, I think we'll use cinnamon cider this time, as that really matches the front of the card. Remember that you want to have some sort of cushioning underneath you when you are using the photopolymer stamps. They stamp much better with a little cushioning behind them. There. Now you'll also see on my original card that there's a star from a paper pumpkin kit this past summer, I believe, and also a tree that I stamped off to the side here. You may certainly further embellish the inside of this card. I'll be honest with you, the reason why those are there is because I was having a terrible day with ink and was getting it everywhere, and so I added a few extra embellishments. Though I do think that the tree looks nice, and maybe I will still add that once we have the tree out. Now we'll set this part of the card aside. The next thing I want to do is I want to take my my Magenta Madness, and I want to color this star. I hope you can see that. And I used the dark Magenta Madness Stampin' Blends to do this. I also used the brush tip, even though this is a small area, I felt it just flowed on there a lot easier. And again, no shading on this. We just want to make that star really pop. So we will do this and give the alcohol a little time to evaporate. So we'll set that aside just for the moment. And the next thing we will do is we will do some die cutting. So these are the pieces that I die cut. And let me bring in to the screen here what I used to die cut these with. So for the snowbank, I used here's what the dies look like. And I used the Pine Woods dies. They've been a favorite of mine this season. And then for the little piece of gingerbread on the side here, that's what I'm calling it, gingerbread trim, I guess, I used the Autumn Essentials dies. And these dies are unfortunately going away. They're a terrific set of dies and stamps. And before the video is over, I will show you the stamps that go with these as well. But anyway, we use this die right here. Now, I left this a little bit larger than I did on this card because sometimes it's good to just play with things a little bit. It's also longer than it needs to be. And we've talked about this before. It's much better to have things longer and then cut it. That way you know it's always going to be the exact size that you need. Because let's face it, we rarely cut things exactly 5.5 or 5 1/4 or whatever the measurement is. Now, on my original card, I glued it to the inside of the card. And I think that's what I want to do again here. Now you'll see it naturally, I hope you can see that. It naturally made a line in here. I'm going to go and over to my cutter and I am going to cut right along that line. And that's what I used as a measurement. For this, I also cut it a little bit larger and then I played with it on the front of my card to see where I wanted this to be. So you can see that you can have it various ways. You can use it at different points. It all depends on how you want yours to look. And this, the widest this measures, it is in the description, but if you're following along here, the widest this measures is 1 3/4 inches. And I think I probably will take a little tiny bit of that off, probably about 1/4 of it. I thought I'd pop back on while I'm cutting this because I wanted to demonstrate again how I use these 3M tabs. So this is going to be really skinny. I'm lining up that line that naturally appeared from the die on the cardstock. I'm lining that up right with, again, the channel. Now to hold this in place, because this will be very hard to hold in place, I'm going to put that down with that and then it will not move on me. Plus the fact that we have this wonderful guard here that you can just press down really hard, and that also helps things not to move. Okay. Now we want to bring our card base back in, and I believe liquid glue works for the best on this. But again, if you're really handy with your tape runner, feel free to use that. It's not going to be necessary to put glue or anything along these points. As long as you run a bead of glue or some tape runner along this edge right here, it will stay down and it will be fine. And you all know my theory about not gluing things down completely anyway, because I always think it's good for a card to have a little bit of movement or a little bit dimension and have everything super flat. So I was really careful putting this down. Let me put some glue on this and we'll do it together. I'm sorry, it looks like I lost the audio to this portion of the video. You can see that I applied the glue and then I did smooth it with my finger to make sure that there would be no lumps and oozing out of those holes. You certainly won't want glue oozing out of those holes. Next, I took the card base and I closed it so that I could easily align the gingerbread trim and making sure that it was straight about against the edge of the card. So I carefully aligned the edge against the top part of the card, making sure it was good and adhered, rubbing it down, giving it a little extra rub there. Again, because of the holes, I didn't want to press incredibly hard. Next, you'll see I took Wink of Stella and put it on the star just to give it a little shimmer and shine. And also it brings down the color just a little bit. I actually did give it 2 coats of Wink of Stella. I had set the gingerbread house trim aside so that it would dry completely. Now it's time to trim off the edges. And again, you just use the edge of your card to align your scissors and it gives you a nice clean cut. And I think you can see that there. Okay, now we're going to bring back the smaller card and we're going to put a little Wink of Stella on the front door. And again, this gives it a nice shimmer and shine and makes it pop out a little bit from the rest of the card. Now the next thing we want to do, and we're at almost one of the final steps, is we want to decide where we want this to be on the card. I have lined it up evenly with the bottom, but then I put this over here, just kind of dry fit it, and I decided where I would like these humps to be. And I think I decided at the end of the day that I wanted it more this way, so that you could see two humps, I guess, or whatever. But you certainly, again, you can put it wherever you want. If you want it to be a little bit less thick, I guess is the word, you know, not have quite so high a amount of snow, then you could use the area towards the right. So you decide, and I'm going to... Okay, everyone, I apologize. Again, I find myself having to do an insert. I comment later in this video that I need to figure out why my record button is not always going on when I've pressed it. But please bear with me and I will walk you through some of the steps that are missing from the original video that I did. So I did take Wink of Stella, as I said, and did 2 coats on the star. I also put a little piece of a dimensional behind it and then attached it to the front of the smaller card here, or right where it originally was, and just to give it a little bit of dimension there. I also then took the Stampin' Blend, the light gray granite stamping blend, and I did some shadowing here, very lightly coloring it with the brush tip side, coloring along here, coloring underneath the trees that I had stamped, and also coloring under where I thought this would be. I had just dry fit it and kind of did it. Then I went back and I used the Stampin' Blends color lifter to lift some of the color from the shadowing and everything, just to lighten it up a bit. And then lastly, I used Wink of Stella and I put it over here. Again, this was a stamp set from the Snowfront stamp set. The stamps, I mean, were from the Snowfront stamp set. This was stamped with Shaded Spruce. This was stamped with Shaded Spruce, but it had been stamped off once. And I did go ahead and stamp on the inside here, as you'll see later in the video as well. Didn't quite come out okay, but I kind of like the way it looked. It kind of looks like it's going around the words there. So, as I said before, perfection is overrated, right? So I think that catches you up in everything I did. The final steps were to attach this to the card. To attach this to the card, which is one of the dimensionals, and from the Paper Pumpkin kit, and your card is done. Thank you for your patience with this insert. Okay, I had to stop the video because I started coughing, and again, my record button didn't go back on when I hit it. So over the Christmas break here, I've definitely got to figure out why that keeps happening to me. But I wanted to show you that I did end up stamping a Christmas tree on the inside here. And then I did get some ink on here because look at my hands. uh, but I was able to get most of it off. I was using the sand eraser, the mono sand eraser by Tombro. The item number is 512A, and it is for ink. And then I affixed this to the card. I used one of the embellishments from the paper pumpkin kit. And I had mentioned that I was probably not going to do anything on the inside right now. I'll save this card for next year. And I will think about what I want to do then. You know, perhaps because this has a sentiment, I will just write on the inside of the card. I also took the flourish and some cinnamon cider ink, and the flourish that is included in the stamp kit, or I should say the paper pumpkin kit. I love this flourish. I've used it all Christmas, and I put that on the back of the card using, again, the cinnamon cider. So thank you very much for watching this video. I'm sorry it was late, but hopefully it was helpful to you to get some more ideas of what you can do with other cards. Having a double fold like this, or a double opening. There's lots of motifs that we could use to do that with. Even a simple circle or square could be made to do something like this. Here, have a healthy and happy new year, and let's have a COVID-free new year as soon as we can. Best wishes to you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.